my first outcome that could potentially happen if MLS got rid of the salary cap, I titled Todd Bowley extrapolated. And by that, I mean, I think obviously not all owners, but I think some owners would start to go buck wild spending, bringing in tons of players, similar to exactly what Chelsea's going through, because they don't know how to properly build a team and would then just see like the door wide open and be like, all right, we could go. We have no more restrictions. We could go bring in whoever we want, throw all this money because we have billions. So just throw all this money, bring in all these players, and we'll just bring in a bunch of people, and eventually some of them have got to work, right? So I think that's one outcome that could potentially happen. Is just like, I mean, again, like I said, not every owner's going to do it. You showed a scarf of a team that definitely wouldn't, but I could see a team like Atlanta doing that exact thing, just being like, we're gonna go bring in every South American player that we can now. We're gonna go bring in 15 Thiago Almadas, and we're just gonna spend all this money, forget a tactic and a system, and building any sort of like cohesion in players that we're bringing in. Just bring in as many people as you can and throw as much money around it. And we have to be successful because that's how it works in other American sports.
I had a note about that, and it was very similar that more star players are going to come to the league for the exact reason. You got the owners, they're worth billions, and they're going to go buy players almost like a Saudi Arabia, like 45 million for a guy who's played 15 times. Have it, have it, have it. Don't care, don't care. Now, and that kind of got me to think, what does that turn the league into, right? Because you can say like, oh yeah, they're obviously, they have no money, they have more money to spend, they're going to spend it, right? But what does that do to the league? So, are we thinking that having all of this freedom raises the profile of the league? Is it going to be like we'll just be the Western Saudi Arabia where people are just going for a bag and not actually going to care, or what does that do to the league here?
I don't think we would necessarily be exactly like a Western Saudi Arabia. I think there would be more enticement for players to come here, just in the fact that, like, I think, I mean, I don't want to offend any people that are listening from Saudi Arabia, but I think it's more enticing for people to want to come live in the US as much as the US has its problems. I just think there's more diversity in nature and different types of cultures and environments that you want to live in the US, and you could kind of have your choice of it. And so I think they'd be able to draw in people better and get some more. I think they'd be able to draw in a better group of players in terms of comparing to Saudi Arabia. But I still think you'd obviously not be able to pull in the same level that like the Premier League can pull in because that league just has so much more reputation, especially in the competitions it competes in. And I think players want to play at the highest level, and that is the Premier League right now. And MLS is still far from that. So I don't think people would just all of a sudden start flooding into MLS to be like, you're not seeing Erling Haaland all of a sudden move to MLS because there's no salary cap anymore.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought process as well was we wouldn't so I agree that America's a nice place to live for the most part, right? It's why a lot of players keep saying, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go to MLS at some point." But it doesn't matter. Like we would have to overpay the way Americans overpay for everything, by the way, but we would need to overpay significantly to get players of actual reputation in their, I like that word, use reputation, in their prime here tomorrow, right? Because your thought process is exactly right. At the end of the day, players have grown up, and probably rightly so, that the European leagues are just the pinnacle of where you want to be. You need to play there at any given cost. You need to play in the Champions League. You need to do X, Y, and Z, and it all needs to be in Europe, right? So it doesn't matter if we start throwing contracts out of, Chelsea contracts of, paying billions of dollars and whatever. The league reputation to me, as a fan, I think great, awesome. We're getting more players, the quality is getting better, right? But overall in the anti-MLS world or the broader Eurosnob world where it's just, oh, they are just doing the next thing Saudi Arabia is. They're sports washing and they're just trying to buy the game and it'll never be Europe. It'll never be Europe. It doesn't matter how many Europeans they get, it'll never be Europe, right? And it almost would go to I don't want to say negative, but it would almost have an equal positive and negative reaction where you're going to have the same amount of people who are like, oh, this is great, are going to be met with the same amount of people who are like, oh, MLS is ruining the game again. Right. And where that breaks even, I think it breaks even on the positive side because more casual people who are just like, oh, I'll go watch because I know this player or that player. More fans know about soccer in this country now than it did even 10, 15 years ago, right? The emergence of FIFA as a video game, the emergence of all of these leagues being able to be seen on ESPN and Peacock and NBC and all these other leagues has been great for the growth. And we talk about the different ways the game can grow. It's been great for the growth of the game just as a fan, as a getting into it, right? Now you're able to bring some of those players over from teams that people have watched, right? Maybe not necessarily the stars of the stars, but oh, this guy was a pretty good center mid in the Prem, and now he gets to come over here and be one of the star players. I'm gonna and it's 2 hours from my house, right? He plays for Charlotte now, he plays for Atlanta. I'm gonna go watch him play a little bit more. I'm gonna follow them more because they're close to me. That is, I think it ends up more positive than negative, but like you mentioned, I don't think it changes everything tomorrow and it's like, oh yeah, MLS is the best league in the world because now it removed its salary cap, right? Like it would take years of growth to get there. And that's why I laugh when people talk about this as being like the end all be all. Like we just need to get rid of the salary cap and we'll be massive, or we need to put pro rel in and we'll be massive. Like nothing happens over time. Everything's got positive and negatives. And again, I think it would almost you would do a lot of, and we talked about the Atlanta thing in our news episode last week, where it was like Boca went in and the whole new thing was buying players from South America because they're South American and dropping big price tags and they flop, right? Well, if you start doing that again at an even greater level from Europe and Asia and Africa and South America and all over the world, you're going to have more people come in and flop and show up for paydays. And it might actually, playing devil's advocate here, it might actually take our quality down a little bit if you get the wrong sorts of people here, the people who are going just to have a paycheck.
Yeah, that's fair. But I'll jump into my second point here. So I think one, I guess for me it would be an issue. I'm not sure everybody would feel the same way, but one issue for me that I think could come out of taking away the salary cap is